Okay, so welcome to the Node.js Technical Steering Committee meeting for March 19th, 2025. Before we get started, does anybody have any announcements they'd like to share?
The deadline of the conversation of Collaborative Summit is next Monday. So please submit the session if you plan to submit one, but have not yet.
It is next Monday. Okay, thanks. Ooh. Sorry, just getting it into the right format. Okay, any other announcements? Okay, we just have our reminders. A reminder to nominate people for the contributor spotlight. In terms of CPC and board meeting updates, I'm just going to say no updates this week since we don't have our reps at this point. So we'll move into the meta edit collaborator nomination process. This is 57483. I'm looking at who added it to the agenda. So this one I think was added to the agenda by Antoine as an FYI to make sure that like enough TSC members have seen it, since it changes the governance. Unless there's anybody like any specific discussion on that PR, I think it was just meant as an FYI. So jump in if you think there is something we should discuss.
I have a question. Because I think James also opened a PR changing the nomination process. And
Yep.
Are these two PRs competing or complementary? Does anyone have any idea?
Paulo's got his hand up, I think. But you're on mute if you're speaking. Oh, I
Sorry.
see Yagus has his hand up as well.
Yeah. No, actually, I was meant to say Robert the second. In one of the comments, they say that they are complementary in theory.
Thank you. That's all I wanted to know.
Okay.
Yes, I was just going to say the same thing, like they're complementary, and I removed my block so we can we can land that pair.
Okay. Okay. So it sounds like that one, it's on as an FYI, and right now there isn't anything necessarily blocking it. Just wanted, I guess the intention was to make sure as many people saw it so that if there are any concerns, they are raised before it lands. Okay. Well, the next one is documentation that project has access to LinkedIn. This one I'd opened based on a request from one of the releasers that they also be able to repost things like posts from LinkedIn when we do releases, similarly to how it was agreed on the for Twitter. But there doesn't necessarily seem to be agreement that from the foundation side. So I think the TSC probably needs an opinion of like, is this something that is important to us or not? And because our choices are like, no, okay, we'll just leave it to the foundation to, with the current processes, which is we will ask them to repost it, or do we think it's important that releasers be able to do that on their own? It's kind of the thing the TSC needs to come to a decision on. So I don't know if anybody here has any thoughts or opinions.
I think Yagiz has his hand
Oh,
up.
sorry. Yeah. Sorry. Great. Thanks. Yeah, Gies has your hands up. Go ahead.
Sorry, I forgot to unraise it. My bad.
Okay. So Marco's got his hand up. Yeah.
So yeah, as a releaser, I can say that this is the last step to like right now, every time we do a release, we have to ping in the Slack channel and wait for someone to like repost the thing. And like Blue Sky is automated. Twitter, we have the account available. So like LinkedIn is just the last thing. And we don't write anything. We just repost the release announcement. So I don't see why we should not have access to that. And like with the rule that we only repost releases, and like from the foundation can handle all the communication and stuff. I don't think anybody has interest in writing LinkedIn posts.
Anybody else? I don't have any thoughts. I mean, I agree that like it seems like a consistent with what we do for Twitter, and like it's one of those things that removing the manual, like manually poking somebody to do something, it makes sense, right? Like we trust our releasers to do releases. I certainly trust them to do a post, to do a repost on LinkedIn as we document it, right? So I'm not worried about that side of things. I guess the you know, the issue is here we don't just have a yes, yeah, we'll do that. So like, you know, it may come down to the TSC saying, hey, you know, versus we've just opened a PR, but you know, we may need the TSC to say we really want to do this or not. So I don't know. Would anybody here, you know, object to the TSC to basically saying the TSC believes we need this? Or, you know, do we people prefer that we just let it go and, you know, in favor of what was the foundation suggesting? I guess I don't hear any strong opinions one way or the other. So, you know, maybe just put it on as like, hey, if you have thoughts, please jump into the issue, and we'll leave it on the agenda for now.
Do we need to? If releasers needed for the release, we can just move it forward. To be honest.
Right. Like it's kind of like I think we'll need to push as a TSC, basically saying, you know, yeah, we hear you not wanting to do it, but we want to do it. So like, you know, whereas, you know, so it's a bit, it's not as simple as just saying we're going to land it and it happens. We don't have access to the credentials, right? So we have to convince the foundation staff to give them to us.
I see. Whatever.
So that's why, like, if it was as simple as just agreeing, yeah, we want this, it's like, you know, the PR says we want this. The answer was, well, we prefer you didn't, right? And like,
Was it
so
just that we were asked to wait for Kylie to come back?
yes, that in my opinion is kind of like no.
Okay.
Like it isn't it wasn't we will give you access when she comes back. It's more I'd prefer you to wait till she comes back so that she can do the repost for you.
Okay.
But like, you know, we could clarify that, right? Like if we think it's a, you know, let's wait until to discuss the issue until then that might be different. But I kind of my understanding was like I'd prefer we wait till she comes back because we want her to do the repost as opposed to giving access, right? And that's two different things.
Well, eventually we can write on the issue that we, as the TC, we have no objection, so we can move this forward eventually.
I mean, we could also ask, you know, have a more direct discussion. It's one of these things we need to make sure that like as a TSC, we're on the same page in terms of whether we want to ask, whether we think it's important, whether it's, you know.
Okay, whatever. I trust your judgment, fine.
So, okay. So, I guess for now, let's leave it on the agenda and we can, I think we've got some group here. Maybe next meeting, we'll have a different group and somebody will be like, no, we shouldn't do that. And so I prefer to just sort of make sure we've got everybody in the loop before we do anything. So, okay. Okay, the next one is process add exec v 56496.
Yep, that's mine. So last week you asked me to ping Hannah privately on the Slack on Slack to ask her to basically to reevaluate the PR. She hasn't replied at all. So at this stage, I want just to merge this PR because I want to overcome this objection since she's disappeared for more than 3 weeks now.
I guess we can go ahead and dismiss the block in that case.
Yeah.
Trying to load the PR. Okay, actually load it now. There was the comment about referring to it with a standard name.
I already replaced that. I mean, I actually
that's
already
done.
addressed.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I addressed all the basically all the objections.
I think
And I survived the C++. So
just in case, I think Anna still replied to one of the pull requests I had last week. So I don't think she's completely disappeared. But I mean, just FYI.
sorry, can you say that again, Joey? Sorry.
Anna, I think Anna replied to a pull request that I had last week, like not long ago. So, so she's still around. Just
No, I
FYI.
know. No, I noticed that actually she was also around when I sent her the message, but yeah, she hasn't replied, and neither
Okay.
acted on the PR. So I guess she's not interested anymore.
Okay.
So any objection, Fox, to dismiss the objection? Sorry for the sentencing. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I think just it might be good to just send on the TSE, like, because we've got we've got 9 people here, but like just as if you sent an email to the rest on the TSE one, that would be like everybody had a chance to say no objection, or
But I
like
mean,
not necessarily waiting for no objection, but like making sure that they are aware that like, hey, I asked and nobody said anything,
But our process does explicitly call out, like, if you have no reply. And I'd have to go back and read what it says, but it did specify that if you haven't had a reply in a certain time period, then the objection can be dismissed. So, provided you've made reasonable attempts to contact the person, but I think in this case we have. So
Yeah, let's not make it more painful than it needs to be and just remove the block.
Okay.
Thank you, Fox.
Okay, we can move on to the next one then, which is deadlock at process shutdown. That's 54918.
Did we ask Ben if he could have a look at that, or what is the status there? I've been missing out a little bit.
As far as
go
I
ahead.
know, oh, sorry. As far
No,
as
no,
I
go
know,
ahead.
Jake is looking into that, but because he sent me a message about, because previously Matteo asked whether performing a garbage collection and shutdown can work, and he tried that, and he was asking me what else, like that didn't work, and is there anything else that he can try? And I was just replying, I did not really look into the issue. I was just trying to reply to what Matteo asked. But I think Jake was looking at it, or like just very recently. I think he's got another pull request or something. But I haven't looked into it.
I do see PR, which says force GC for flaky deadlock test. It's 57476. but it's closed and right. The comment says that was closed, but it says fair points. I will continue to dig the underlying issue with the rest of us and hopefully we can. So that was 4 days ago. So I think that confirms like he is actively looking at the issue, even if that PR didn't quite turn out.
I guess then we just move this to the next meeting, and if somebody can maybe give him a ping at some point and see what his status is, I think that would be great.
Okay, so we can leave it on the agenda till next week. So the next one on the agenda is node.js.nodejs.org, Feat supporter page, an updated homepage. This one is really as an FYI. It's related to some work, and we've talked about funding and we've turned on the Open Collective and so forth. And so part of what I've been pushing on a little bit behind the scenes is like, how do we document what our asks are? And also how we'll recognize supporters on the web pages. So this is something that Claudio put together based on some of my discussions with him. I will mention when we get to one of the other issues, we don't have a clear path to what we can do with funding, how much funding we can ask for. So like that might affect this, although there's no reason, I don't think, why, even if we're told, no, you can't generate any funding, that we couldn't use this to recognize some of our existing supporters, whether they be infrastructure supporters or people doing releases, because that's part of the, what I was proposing. But this is as an FYI here so that, we can get any early input on, like, if we added this supporting thing, those JS logos, if you're looking at it, would be like the logos of companies who have been identified as supporters, as per the other PR we'll get to in the agenda. So it's mostly as as an FYI, make sure nobody's surprised. So I'd suggest, unless there's questions on that, I'm just going to go to document the first cut at the sponsor agreement, sponsor page documentation. That's pull number 995. And that was my attempt to say, like, hey, here's what the sponsor page would look like, given what we've documented for our asks and current sponsors, and trying to balance, like, hey, we want to make sure we recognize people who are sponsoring through people and through funding. But it turns out that I guess my understanding in terms of what we're allowed to do in terms of raising funds is not so clear. So we're waiting for some feedback on the board on that one. And so really, I think that one, there's not too much to discuss until we hear back in terms of clarity on what we can or should do. Feedback. So I'll leave it, I think, leaving it at that, unless anybody has a specific question on that one, we can move on to some of the other issues. The next one, I think, is let's talk about the CI situation, which is number 1614. I think we've kind of covered that already, in the one about the deadlock at process shutdown, because I think that's one of our biggest issues, as well as funding was kind of the other avenue I thought we might be able to make some progress, is like if we can actually raise some funds through sponsorship, maybe we can use that to improve the CI. But yeah, I don't know if anybody else has any other specific things to sort of cover under that.
I'm not sure if this ties into the CI situation, but also the V upgrade is having a lot of trouble as far as I can tell from the instructor. Well, it's kind of also part of CI problem, not the main branch CI, but I think every upgrade, there are usually a lot of problems with certain platforms, which is still happening right now. And Targos commented that this might delay the next major release.
Right. Yeah. I don't know off the top of my head if that's directly related to the flaky CI issues or issues. I think my sense is there's actually some problems on platforms versus the issues. Chen Tong has his hand up though.
I think there were some fixes in V8 upstream that should have fixed some of the failure, but from what I can tell, the remaining failures are mostly platform specific, like SmartOS and Linux. So it'll be great to have people who have access to these machines to see what's happening there.
When you say Linux, I thought it was Windows. I get that wrong.
I think there's like ARM specifically, not Linux, but ARM.
Yeah, there are failures on ARM,
Right.
32-bit
Yeah,
ARM.
right.
So 64-bit ARM's fine, 32-bit ARM is failing, and I think there are a few failures in some of the shared library builds that I haven't had the time to look at yet. But yeah, so there are some failures on Linux or Intel in the shared library configurations. There are failures on 32-bit ARM. Then SmartOS and Windows are also failing. We do get some response from the SmartOS team, so they're going to look at that. And I think Stefan was ill last week or recently, so he's not had time to look at it yet. But he's been trying to move Windows to build with CLang rather than Visual Studio because Google dropped support for Visual Studio in upstream V8, so it feels like a losing battle to try and keep building on Windows with Visual Studio. But yeah, I don't know where that is, but I know he's been working towards that, and there's been changes that have landed on main, especially around like caching, because we had to use a different cache program with CLang versus what we're using it with MS-VC. So I know Stefan's been working on it, and he's been trying to prioritize that over some other work that we've got in build on Windows that is important, but probably isn't as important as this. So yeah, I don't know what the outlook is in getting those fixed, but yeah, there are people aware. But yeah, the more
Yeah.
help we can get, I guess, the better.
I think those are just SmartOS failures and dynamic linked OpenSSL. There's some issues with dynamic OpenSSL and ARM, several ARM issues, and the Windows issue is probably the easiest. Like we can YOLO and ditch NSVC.
Yeah.
But others also need more.
I think the dynamic OpenSSL, I think that is just us running out of memory on the containers. And it remains to be seen whether that's sort of transitory like a flake because of the load on the CI, or whether that is another V8 has bumped their build requirement. They don't have a stated build requirement that you need X amount of memory to build V8, but we have found over time that each successive version of V8 is putting more and more memory pressure onto our CI machine. So, as an anecdotal, we used to be able to build Node in like 2 gigs of RAM, and we can't anymore. So, every now and then we've had to bump up provisioning, but it's not easy to do that because, we've got to, we don't have infinite resources. So we sometimes have to be a bit creative in the CI to try and cater for that, if that is the actual issue we've run into.
That was a lot of info. What part of that are we addressing here?
This is the V8 upgrade, so I think this is just a general call for help for people to look at the V8 update PR and see if they can help unblock like the CI failures. But I think generally it's felt that maybe the original thing we were talking about, which was CI flakiness, is that may be in addition to the problems being seen in the V8 update. But I think there are some specific issues in the V8 update which are specific to that V8 update that we need either help from platform teams, but also more general help, depending on like where the failures are.
Talking about the CI situation, I remember there was a lot of talk about the tiers of the different OS platforms, etc., and whether that causes problems with the CI. Are we past that, or did we just drop that, or does anyone remember what the state on that became?
We park that for now. I don't think that doing that would magically make all these problems go away. It's like sort of skirting around edge conditions. So if it was the only thing blocking us doing a V8 upgrade, then yeah, that could be a discussion. But it's just part of the story, and traditionally Windows has been one of the most problematic, but that's a tier 1 platform. I think we would struggle to downgrade that. If people want to have that discussion, feel free. But there are issues that we have, which I don't think there are simple answers to, unfortunately.
Right. Thank you.
If SmartOS end up being the last item on the list that we need to tackle for that V upgrade, we may need to discuss again whether, like if supporting SmartOS means we'll have to delay the 24 release for an indefinite amount of time, that might come up again. But for now, probably not.
Yeah,
But that might
absolutely.
come up.
Matteo has his hand up.
I probably missed a little bit of the context, but so there is a problem with the V8 update for the 24, if I understand correctly, and there is problems on Windows. Is the Windows platform still mapping?
So I did mention that Stefan did say, I can't remember what issue. It might be. There's been some other issues in build around Windows, but he did wade in to say he was away. He was ill last week.
Okay.
So
Okay.
if there was no response last week, that would have been why. But he has prioritized trying to get. So he's been doing work to move the Windows builds to CLang from Visual C++. And that's ongoing. So that's what he's trying to prioritize to move the Windows builds to CLang. Hopefully that will make the build failures go away on V8, but I don't know. I'm not sure if we've actually tried that yet.
The Windows issue is specifically NSVC compiler bug. So if we ditch NSVC and just switch to CLang, there will be no problem. It's just like we have not decided to just
I believe
ditch
that's his
that yet.
hope. Yeah.
Yeah, there's like a silver lining. Because as far as I can tell from what's described, the CLang, if we just ditch, the CLang will just work. But
So it sounds like, from what I heard, Stefan is actively working on the Windows side. Richard, you mentioned, like, I pinged the SmartOS team saying, hey, we please get involved. Sounds like, Richard, you've said you've seen some involvement. And you're looking at, Richard, you also said you're looking at the SSL, like, dynamic testing where there's some issues. I guess 32-bit ARM is one where it would still be great if somebody jumped in, because there's not necessarily anybody looking at that one. Is that accurate?
I think that's accurate. It's some compilation failure.
Okay, and it is definitely good. Like, it's, I think it's from Michael Z's comment, this is definitely a risk. So, like, there's some people working on some of the aspects, but it's definitely still a risk in terms of all the different things that will need to get fixed before we're ready.
But the issue, is that the issue, or is that another? There is a list in the top of the issue of the platforms that are failing. So if people want to take a look, if they feel there's anything they can contribute to those.
Okay, we are at the 35-minute point, and I think we wanted to reserve a reasonable amount of time for the private session. So I'm going to suggest we close out the public sessions at this point. And if everybody can stick around, that would be great. Thanks. Let me push the break button.